Oh my God, I'm gonna fucking kill my daughter.
Welcome back to the Mighty MERP podcast. My name is Tom. I'm MERP's producer, and I need to explain briefly what you're about to hear. At the end of the first segment that you just listened to, Melissa may have been interrupted by one of her children. Melissa, of course, hit pause on the recording, had a discussion with the child who will remain nameless, and then continued her conversation with Ava Murray. Unfortunately, somewhere in there, the record button stayed on pause. So what you're about to hear is immediately after Melissa and Ava believed they had just concluded the entire podcast, and Melissa discovered she was actually not recording. Please enjoy this extension of the Mighty MERP podcast.
Mighty MERP is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com. That's mightymerp.com.
Oh, man, Melissa.
I cannot believe I didn't look. I thought it started playing again. Oh my God, I'm gonna fucking kill my daughter. Tom, I'm really not gonna kill her. Do you have like 20 minutes or 30 minutes?
I have about 20. I have to be somewhere at 5:30.
I am so sorry.
Okay.
So, I'm going to go back. I think we were talking when she came in. I'm so heartbroken right now. We were talking about favorite shows that inspired you.
Yeah.
And
I said Ally McBeal, and I didn't even mention Law and Order. How could I have forgotten that? That's how I get my detective. That's where I get my detective skills from.
Law and Order. That's so funny. I taught at Rowan in their Law and Justice Department for years, and my first day of classes, every time I taught, I said, do not ask me about Law and Order or Criminal Minds or any of those shows. I do not watch TV, and they're not real.
Oh my goodness. I love those shows.
Yeah, I yell at the TV. I'm like, that's not the way it is. So
I do too. I'm like, that would never hold up in court.
So what do you think the hardest part of being a criminal defense attorney?
The hardest part about being a criminal defense attorney is trying to correct categorically stupid things my clients have done, like not asserting their right to remain silent and actually confessing to the crime, and not only confessing but literally drawing a map of where evidence is. It's like, I'm not a magician. I can't go back in time and correct this error, especially if there are no Miranda issues, right? Especially if you went to the police station 3 times.
Yes.
And gave these statements. It's like, how am I supposed to help you? What can help you?
Well, I always say that, I'm sure you do too, that I'm always trying to get the best results, based on the facts and the circumstances of each case. And for every client, that's something different,
Absolutely. I might, I can probably not have you serve the maximum time, but I'll do my best to get you a really good plea offer. And I'm usually, because I'm not going to lie, Melissa, lately, most of my cases have been like that, where, it's there. I don't have much wiggle room based on the facts and the circumstances, So my goal at that point is to obviously make my client a human being to the prosecutor and have them, see my position, my client's position, and give me the best plea offer. So I've been really good with that, except for this current case that I'm trying to fight. But yeah. So that's the most difficult thing about being a criminal defense attorney.
Right. I mean, you always have a case or two that it's, that I say hurts your heart, that
Yeah.
Either the clients are detained or you believe that they're not guilty or you believe they're being overcharged.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this injustice done. And,
Yeah.
I like most of my clients.
Me too.
I don't always like what they did, but for the most part, I like my clients. And the ones that I don't like, it has nothing to do with what they're charged with, ever.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah, absolutely. So, you've seen the new gun laws coming out in New Jersey?
Mm-hmm.
And as a criminal defense attorney, what are your thoughts when you read about, kind of expanding and tough gun laws? New Jersey has the toughest gun laws in the country.
The thing that upsets me the most is the mandatory minimum. I don't like any of the mandatory minimum laws we have here because there's no provision made for folks who made honest mistakes, and an honest mistake obviously does not include firing a firearm and, someone committing a crime. The honest mistake is taking the gun from another state where you probably have a license and bringing it into New Jersey. If the prosecutor wants to be this big shot on, hard on gun laws type of prosecutor, and they don't agree with the Graves waiver, this person is probably going to prison for 3.5 years. As you know, the mandatory minimum is 5 years, but it's frustrating. I feel like I get it. The entire country should be tough on guns because every day we have a mass shooting. I get it. But when you make an honest mistake, it should not, especially something as I just discussed, it shouldn't ruin your life.
Right. And so New Jersey has these mandatory minimum sentences. If you have a permit to carry in Pennsylvania, really Philly, or in any other state, and you come to New Jersey, you're not lawfully carrying the gun in New Jersey.
Right.
An individual is really looking at a maximum 10 years and a minimum 5, serve 3.5.
Right.
And as you and I know, the prosecutor can offer a diversionary program or probationary for that individual, but it's the prosecutor of the county that you're in that has full discretion of whether to grant it or not.
Right. And it's really one of the most frustrating things, and my argument is he didn't even use the gun to commit a crime. It was just in his glove box. It wasn't even loaded. It was just in the glove box. Well, if I give him this, then everyone who breaks the law is going to come here and say, well, this case, you did this. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yes.
Every case is supposed to be looked at individually anyway. You shouldn't be lumping everything together. That's not the way we practice law. That's not the way the criminal justice system should be, So it's these little silly arguments I continuously get, and it's just, I think it's unfair.
Right. Well, that's the whole problem with, I think, generally any mandatory minimum sentence, that nobody can look at the individual standing before the court. And usually, and we're talking about possession cases of people that have legitimately, lawfully owned the gun where they reside. Right. Are looking at these mandatory prison sentences. So, yeah. Right. And we've had a conversation before about, prosecutors wanting to be tough, taking a tough position generally, which is always frustrating. What are your thoughts on what kind of makes prosecutors have that point of view of, stay prison, stay prison, stay prison? on cases?
Because they want to be seen as a prosecutor that's tough on crime, so they can move up the ranks. They can move from whatever current cases they handle to maybe the sexual battery unit, so they can make more money. Or maybe for the future for political gain, or to maybe run for judgeship one day. I get it. Everyone has these career aspirations, but you shouldn't use other people's lives as a means to get to where you want to go. Every individual that comes before you should not just be a file or a number. That person should come to you as an individual, and you should look at each case that way. These are human beings. They're not stepping stones for your aspirations.
Right. And you said it. I always think that the problem is the aspect of, especially the younger attorneys, they're just seeing it as files. They're not seeing the individual as a human with a family, with, parents or children or spouses, with their own, with their own life and their own, own potential and goals as well.
Exactly. And the one area of law that gets me is the way they treat juveniles. I've known this since I was in high school, that your prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until you're 26. But they treat juveniles as though they're adults. They're giving them these adult sentences. They're making them register as sex offenders. Like, how can you make a 13-year-old register as a sex offender when he serves after he completes his sentence? Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know. The criminal justice system is very frustrating. It's very frustrating. I love my job. I love when I get the results that my clients deserve. But then on the other hand, sometimes I lay awake at night saying to myself, and I'm sure you do too, Melissa, like, could I have said this? What did I do wrong? Should I have done this? It's very frustrating. And I don't feel like it should be a cookie cutter result for everyone.
Right.
Like I said earlier, you should look at the individual.
Right. And I agree with you. I have said to my staff, when it no longer hurts my heart, when a client is detained or I lose a case and I don't care, when I no longer care, that's when I know I'm done. Like, that's when I know I need to step away from criminal law, because when you have someone's life and liberty and freedom in your hands and they're relying on you, the idea that it doesn't matter, just you can't be effective that way. And as I said, I've said it, like, when I no longer care, when it no longer upsets me, or I'm no longer thinking about my clients or cases, afterwards, I think, like, I need to do something else with my life.
I completely agree. My dad always says to me, you're always so stressed out, and you need to take care of yourself. I'm like, if I'm not stressed out about my cases, then I won't do a good job. If I'm not stressed out, if I'm not going full force, I'm not going to do a good job. I can't handle criminal cases as though they're a real estate closing. It's not something I can do, and that's not how you're effective. So,
correct.
I agree with you completely.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. There is more to come. Mighty MERP is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com. That's mightymerp.com. This podcast is not a source of legal advice. No two legal cases are the same. Contact an attorney if you require legal assistance.